Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's been one hell of a week for me. I don't know about you, OS. I'm absolutely pooped. How are you?
That's a normal feeling for you on a Friday late afternoon, I feel.
Not at this moment in time. It's a very very demanding time at work. So we're being squeezed as hard as one can be squeezed. I just don't have any juice left in me. So I'm looking forward to the weekend, relaxing a little bit. But you've obviously been relaxing all week, so I presume you're refreshed, revitalized, re-energized.
Could do with another 6 weeks off. So to answer your
Steady
question,
on.
steady on. Yes, exactly. No, it's been a lovely week. As you know, we went to Fujairah for a few days, which is really nice. It's an hour and a half away, up on the coast near the Gulf of Oman, but really, really nice. Good break for the family as well. Back since Wednesday evening, back in the apartment, relaxing, and back to work on Monday. So yeah, life must go on. But in the meantime, there's lots of good football taking place. So always nice to catch up.
Leeds have been playing very well. We had another victory on Tuesday, so I'm a happy bunny at this moment in time. We've got a tough game tomorrow against Bristol City away, so hopefully we'll pick up another 3 points. So it keeps the mood going, keeps the energy flowing, because at
Did
the
you?
moment I need it.
Yeah, did you? Don't know if there was some money exchange with the Watford goalkeeper in midweek, but I did read.
He had a couple of howlers. I think he probably obviously knows how Melia feels, but it was a strange game. We set off like a sort of a house on fire. And then we got Ramzani who was injured, and then it just went a little bit flat. I mean, you looked at the stats; it's very favourable in our terms, but Watford, I think they'll count themselves unlucky to come away from Enroll with nothing. But we'll take it. At the end of the day, it's about 3 points, so very very happy. Right, on to the Premier League. There's only one game really that we need to talk about. That's it's the Big Daddy, the mother of all games. So Leeds.
Leeds,
I've got Leeds on the brain.
the
Yeah,
dad
it's
said nobody ever. The daddy of
yeah.
all games, Leeds against who? Nobody's interested, are you?
Right. It's Liverpool versus Arsenal, a massive, massive game. Uh, it I don't know. I mean, maybe perhaps it's sort of pushing it a little bit too far. But if Arsenal lose, are they out the running for the title? So, what's your take on that? If Arsenal lose, where do you see Arsenal sort of being? Because they've already lost one game. This could be quite a psychological hammer blow if they lose again.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of chatter in the media as well this week. I think Paul Merson, to name one. I know, don't get upset. Every time I quote Paul Merson, you do get a little bit upset. And I agree, he's got some outlandish takes, but we'll take them as we find them. He did suggest that if Arsenal lose, they would be out of the title race. In fairness, I think he suggested that earlier this season when Arsenal were playing Man City and Spurs back to back, that if they don't pick up 4 points, they'll be out. So there's a lot of he's putting a lot of obstacles Arsenal's way in terms of them potentially being out of the Premier League title race. Look, I think what I would say, just to answer your question, is that if they do lose, I don't think they're out of it. I still believe it's too early, and I think in every season there's lots of difficult kind of hurdles and difficult moments in the season to overcome, right? And this is clearly a challenging one for Arsenal right now in terms of injuries, in terms of form, not quite firing midweek. Another game where you'd be hopeful in Champions League to really put a good performance in and win comfortably. They won relatively comfortably, but I thought Spartak did do themselves some justice, and Arsenal did struggle to some extent, especially in that second half. So no, I don't think they're out of it if they lose Ayub. I still think there's a lot of football to be played. They'd be 7 points behind a Liverpool team that will be full of confidence if they come to the Emirates and find a victory. They'll really start to believe. Obviously, they'll probably be 6 points behind Man City. We're assuming Man City will beat Southampton at home. You'd have to think so, given Southampton's form and obviously Man City's credentials. So no, I don't think they are out of it. I think it's a huge game, though. I think it's a huge, huge game. I do think Arsenal can't lose, as in when I say can't lose, I don't think they can afford to lose in the sense of I think a draw's fine. I think a draw's fine. Some might say they're at home. to some extent, I'm not a huge. I don't have a huge issue with Arsenal right now in terms of home and away. I do think when they've got all their players fit and firing, whether it's home or away, I think they can pick up a result. And I mean that even again in the big ground. So if they had to go back to Anfield, they've obviously got Man City at home. But I think the season's more than just those two games. Clearly, as shown in the last three games that Arsenal have played, Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, arguably couldn't have, may well have. Drop points in all of them. To be fair, if you see how the games went, so they all matter. I really don't think, like I said, I think Arsenal uh, a, a draw would be fine. I think given the current circumstances of injuries, of form, I think a draw is fine. But I think what I've liked the most going into this game, especially, is Arteta in some of his quotes. I mean, look, they are going through a really rough time with injuries, especially in key areas. Then you've got the suspension of Saliba, but he's not using any of that as an excuse. He's talking about the fact that they have to embrace it. They've got a squad. They've got to find a way. Now, I think most football observers, most neutral observers would say, look, if you're missing Odegaard and Saka for any period of time, you're not going anywhere. Not in terms of a title challenge. Now, some might argue, well, Man City have missed De Bruyne, but Man City have been there, done it. They've got the wherewithal to withstand that. Plus, they've got an amazing squad. I mean, they've got De Bruyne, who's not played any real meaningful minutes this season. You've got Foden, who's just really kind of coming up to form, and they're still just 1 point off the top. And Foden won the Premier League Player of the Year last year. So I think they've got they've got the wherewithal. I think from an Arsenal perspective, they need a lot of things to go right for them, especially when you're going for that first Premier League title in a very long time. But they're going through a difficult moment. And I think ultimately, if you want to achieve the big stuff, the big titles, the big trophies, you've got to find a way. You've got to find a way to stick it out. I'm not necessarily suggesting that they've got to go out there on Sunday and win. I really don't believe in that. Not just yet. It's a little too early. I just think whilst they've got a few players missing in critical areas, I think they've just got to stay in the race, so to speak, if that makes sense. And I think they'll be hoping that if they can be in touching distance, let's say I'm talking like maybe 4, maybe 5 points adrift at the halfway mark, they'll still feel confident that they can go into that second half of the season, health pending, to go chase the others down. So it's a huge game. I think from a Liverpool perspective, if I may, you just very quickly, it's a huge, huge opportunity. I mean, you're missing Saliba and Odegaard, who'll be missing for sure. It's a great chance for them. I think the key for victory for Liverpool, before I'd hand it over to yourself, Ayub, is they've got to make the game a little bit desperate and a little bit emotional for Arsenal. Arsenal have felt that they've probably been a little bit hard done by with some decisions, with obviously injuries early on, really affecting some of their results and their performances. I mean, especially the Odegaard one, they miss the class and control that it gives you.
Yeah.
I would argue a lot of the negative incidents in some of the games probably don't happen if Odegaard's on the pitch, simply because you have more of the ball, you've got more control, you've got ball in better areas, you're probably less susceptible with teams running at you because you've got, he probably already gives you another 7% possession. Of the ball, just his incredible skill and quality. So I think from a Liverpool perspective, I think they've got to play on the emotion that Arsenal will be feeling, some of the desperation. I think you've got to a few decisions. The crowd's going to go a little bit desperate. The fans are going to feel like this is a game Arsenal have to win. I think Liverpool just need to stay in the game, be calm, be measured. They've got an unbelievable amount of confidence right now. I thought they played some scintillating football in midweek. Yes, Leipzig were perhaps a little unlucky not to score themselves, but Liverpool could have had a fair few themselves. And again, some wonderful football being played. They are improving offensively game by game from what I can see, at least for the most part. So I think as long as they can make the game a little bit emotional, a little bit desperate from Arsenal's side, I really do think that Liverpool can come away perhaps with maximum points. Again, making Arsenal kind of really earn that result. I think Liverpool can maybe pick them off to some extent, especially with their athleticism. I think Arsenal, if there's one thing they're probably lacking with some of those key players missing, is a great deal of pace, dynamism, and athleticism. And that's something Liverpool, for the most part, especially the way they attack, have got in abundance. So a huge game awaits for two very different reasons. But I think if Arsenal want to achieve the big stuff this year, these are the kind of tests that you've got to at least navigate. It's one of those where if you lose, it could be critical. But if you draw, I mean, it's fine. Obviously, a win's amazing, but I don't think the draw is the end of the world as well.
I agree. I think you were right when you said it. It's a must not lose for the Arsenal. I've got a feeling that this probably might be his mindset because of the players missing. I'm not sure about Saka. I think it's not confirmed, but there seems to be some reports that he may be available. Some reports saying that he's not going to be fit. I think it's key because Saliba, obviously, he's a rock at the back. Odegaard, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you've waxed lyrical and rightly so. I think he's an outstanding player. any side, it's a huge gaping hole if you don't have that player. The quality that he brings, the calmness, the assurance, and he's a leader. He's a leader, and I think that's something that's been missed. So it's a great test in one way for Arteta because I think as a manager you're always developing. I think this is something which is it's interesting to see how he navigates this situation. Uh, I've got a feeling that he'll be just thinking, right, I do not want to lose this game. The problem then is because if you're setting up to perhaps have a draw in the game, it maybe perhaps that's not the Arsenal way because on the whole, when all the players are available, it's always to win the game. So it's going to be interesting how he sets up. Under normal circumstances, you might expect the Arsenal to be on the front foot. If they're not on the front foot, I think that just gives an opportunity for Liverpool because really what you want to do at home is set the tone. This is where it's going to be interesting what the approach is, especially if Saka's not playing. Because I think if Saka's not playing, it's definitely there for the taking for Liverpool. If Saka's playing, I still think Liverpool are favourites, but it just perhaps gives a little opportunity, a little glimmer of hope for the Arsenal because they've got a match winner in Saka. So I would, if I was a Liverpool supporter, if I was a Liverpool player, if I was Arne Slot, I would be looking at this as a huge opportunity uh, against a major rival to get 3 points. It's and it's going to be defining for the season, but it certainly is going to be a difficulty because you're talking about these teams that drop very, very few points. So really, what you don't want to be doing is dropping points so early on in the season. The Arsenal result last game, it was disappointing. To have another defeat, it's just going to maybe shake things up. I obviously know that they're going to say, "Well, look, we've got missing players. As soon as they're back, obviously it will put us in a much better position. But you don't want to be dropping too many points early doors. So I would sort of say, if Saka plays, there's a chance. If Saka doesn't play, there's no chance. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good summary that Ayub. Look, from an Arsenal perspective, you're right. Saka does give him, for me, he's the best player in that position currently. I know Salah has been there, done it over the previous years, no doubt about it, a legend. I really do think Saka, especially the way he started this season, Ayub, contributing assists in all of the first 6 or 7 games, big contributions as well. We're talking corners, crosses, making decisive contributions, which is that last aspect of a player's growth and development, isn't it? You're deciding
Yeah.
games, putting together moments. I still think there's a little bit there further to unlock that selfishness that you perhaps need. To pick on that out and out, let's say, monster of the game, where you're constantly, deciding to shoot instead of always being so deferential as he often is. But yeah, he's missing games for the first time in his career, really. To be fair, I think the statistics bear that out. He's only missed 3 or 4 Premier League games since he broke into the Arsenal team, which is a credit to him and I guess the player personnel staff and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think without him, Arsenal will get picked off, and again, mainly down to the athleticism. I think if you look at Slot's selection in midweek, I kind of expect Diaz to start. He was on the bench for the last 2 Liverpool games, Premier League and Champions League. I think he's kept an eye on this Emirates game.
Yeah.
And I think if Arsenal had, let's say, their back four, whether that's Timber, Calafiori, or Ben White and Timber on the other side, I think that's how he'd like to play. He'd like to play Ben White at right back, all things being
Mm.
equal, and Timber at left back with Calafiori in reserve. Simply because I think he really likes the way White, Odegaard, and Saka mesh. So I think if he had his choice, those would be the front the three on that side. But I think Ben White may well be needed in the middle. Let's see. Let's see how he decides to go in Saliba's absence. But I think the fact of the matter is Arsenal, how they navigate, like you said, it's at the Emirates. The crowd's going to be in it. Again, I still think I come back to that word. If Liverpool can make the game a little bit emotional, a little bit tetchy, a little bit where Arsenal may feel aggrieved at 1 or 2 decisions, and no doubt there'll be some incidents. It always is relatively drama packed between these two teams. I think Liverpool can pick them off, and I think it's a huge, like you said, an opportunity for them. Arne Slot's had a really good start to the season. They've only obviously dropped points in 1 Premier League game, which they'll be pretty disappointed in at home to Nottingham Forest. When you go to the Emirates and you think at what Arsenal can put out, and the fact that they're going to have so many different moving parts because one void often leads to another because you're having
Mm.
to shuffle the pack, so to speak. Plus the fact that Liverpool are feeling good, are feeling confident, they feel like they can score goals. They look threatening. They have a clear way to play football. They've got relative control in a lot of these games as well. No doubt, I expect both teams to create opportunities. There's no two ways about it. And Saliba's a huge, huge miss. I do expect that to be some impact. But for Liverpool, to your point, if you want to I mean, I expect them to challenge because I've seen nothing to suggest that they won't. To be fair, even last year to some extent they were there, right there till 31st,
Mhm.
32nd game before they fell away. But these are the moments, isn't it? Away from home to one of your biggest rivals, and they're a little wounded, and they've got a few players missing, critical players, I would say. You're not just talking about some kind of ancillary parts here and there. You can just plug in some gap, but they're missing critical players. I can make the argument they may well be missing their three best players in Odegaard, Saka, and Saliba when the game starts on Sunday. But somehow, and I really like Arteta's, and I know he gets some bad press, and maybe I'm biased and fair. I'll call him out when I see it. But I thought his press conference today and his general noises have been about this game and the injuries have been spot on. He's not crying about it. No excuses. We are where we are. We have to find a way, and I think he's trying to transmit those positive vibes to his team. It's an incredible game. I'm sure it will be a lot of drama, no doubt. But it's a huge, huge opportunity for Liverpool. I really do feel that way. It would give them a great deal of confidence, and no doubt Man City, and I guess you can't rule out some of the other boys just yet, the Villas, the Chelseas, and all the rest of it. But Man City will probably feel as though a draw would probably suit them best. But let's see. It's a difficult one to call. How do you see it? How do you see it ending up?
I, I I hope, obviously, with my Liverpool bias, I hope Slot takes the opportunity. It's as simple as that. I think there is an opportunity. Even if Saka plays, it obviously strengthens Arsenal, makes them much more potent. But there's enough weakness, as I said, if to not have Saliba, to not have Odegaard. These are huge players. These are world stars. So I hope Slot does play on the front foot. Uh, I'm curious to find or to see how Arteta approaches this, because this is a real test, because it's against, obviously, one of your major competitors for the league. And I am intrigued. It's home. No, normally a home game, you always want to be in the ascendancy. So I hope uh, that he doesn't shut up shop, because I think that to me would be that sends a bad signal. I think you have to be pragmatic. You have to sort of say, well, look, we can't just go gun ho. But I certainly want him to have the intention, right? We're here, we're home. We still have enough quality. We have enough self-belief, but we are going to take Liverpool on. I hope he does that. If he just sort of he's very cautious, very meticulous, almost waiting for a break, and play like an away game, I'd be disappointed, because I expect him to still sort of have enough confidence in his charges, but maybe that will play to Liverpool's hands if they do that. So I mean, it's an intriguing prospect. I feel Liverpool will probably win. And I think in the end it will be quite a comfortable win. I'm predicting 3-1. I think Liverpool will concede, but I sort of see it as a 3-1. What's your thoughts on the result?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I would take a draw. I would take a draw because I often, you know me, I try and be pragmatic about these things that you rather than kind of this kind of emotional wreck at times. I do think, again, you can be out of Premier League title races before you're in them, so to speak. And I think Arsenal right now, you've got to understand the moment. You've got to understand that these are difficult times in terms of the personnel being missed, in terms of the form not quite being there. But I do think that's a result of key personnel being missed. Um, and I do think Arsenal have a team and a squad actually that has the capability at some point this season to really start firing and to put a consistent run together. I really do. I think they've got a strong defense if and when the time arises. They've had a little bit of a shaky run right now, but that's fine. It can happen. The season's not just going to be hunky dory all season long. So I would take a draw. My concern is that if Liverpool show the poise that I think they can, uh, they will feel confident they can get goals on this Arsenal team, and they can
Yeah.
outrun them. They can outrun them in terms of, I'm talking like off the ball runs, third man runs to get them on the transition, on the counter, because that's when Liverpool looks super dangerous. And I think they will unleash Diaz, Salah. Jota did pick up an injury, so let's see how that works out. Who he goes with up front, whether he moves Gakpo there, whether he plays Nunez. Let's see how he wants to shake it out. Maybe he plays some sort of false 10, who knows, or false nine, I should say. Um, I'll take a draw. My concern is that Liverpool might just pick them off given I feel Arsenal will feel desperate at some point in the game. But yeah, I'm gonna probably just edge Liverpool 2-1 in what will be probably a drama-filled game, I feel.
Absolutely, yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be really, really exciting. Right, that's at the top end of the table. A team that is in flux and seems to have been in flux for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Man United. It's just it's a drama that just doesn't seem to be going away. We're still sort of oh well, I say we. I mean, our Man United fans are still sort of unsure whether Ten Hag's the man. He seems to always he seems to be on the gallows constantly, awaiting the hangman's noose, and he always seems to have a state of execution. So where do you think United are going? Because I've got to be honest, it seems to be just drifting. I think if I was a United fan, I'd be quite irate because the club needs to make a decision as to which direction they're going. Ten Hag seems to I was going to say a divided opinion, but I don't think he does. I think there's so many fans who are opposed to Ten Hag. They don't really think there's any. So what's your take on the season they've had thus far, and how do you sort of see that United and Ratcliffe in the future? What plans there are in terms of moving into a football club, but it's just going nowhere.
Yeah, and I thought you summarized it well there, you in your introduction in terms of you use the word drift. And I think that has been the case this year, right? For the most part. Uh, Look, I think in terms of the season so far, it's been very much so-so. And now there's a point where you are who you are. The table doesn't lie, right? And the table over the last year and a half, couple of years hasn't lied in terms of United's performances, in terms of United's results. They currently still sit in the table, I think, in the bottom half, I think, with a -2 goal difference. What I would say is in their last game, in the Premier League game, I did watch it from start to finish against Brentford, and it felt like in the first half, although they were a little bit unlucky to concede from a set piece when De Ligt was off the field, receiving treatment for quite a bad gash, it seemed like this could be the day because another negative result at home against a decent team in Brentford, but a team that at home you've got to be putting away. It felt as though this could be the day in a lot of ways. Now, what I would say is, though, in the second half, Man United give them huge credit. I thought they turned it around superbly well. They didn't just win the game, Ayub. They deserved to win the game as well. They played on the front foot. They were winning second balls. The crowd was into it. I really thought they were really good. They were well deserving. There were a few moments at the end, but that's nervousness, I guess, going to creep in when you're only 1 goal up. But give them a huge amount of credit. A wonderful goal from Højlund, well worked as well in terms of the play between Fernandes and Højlund. And I thought they were well deserving. And there were some signs in that second half of what Manchester United could be, let's say. But I just think they're so far off the top teams in terms of having the ability to sustain a way of playing over 97 minutes consistently, game in, game out. They look like, and I thought Gary Neville summarized it well, they still look like a team that's reliant on moments, reliant on good moments from their key players. And when that's not there, when good teams are nullifying you, and most of the teams in the Premier League are good teams, they can suss out tactical, let's say, weaknesses. You're gonna come a cropper because you then need a system to fall back on. You need a muscle memory, a way of playing some patterns, and that's something that Ten Hag still has not developed. Not that I can see. There's a lot of chop and changing at the back, Ayub, in terms of the centre backs. Who's he going to play? Who's he not going to play? Is that a lot of movement at fullbacks? He's brought Ugarte in, but he's not quite broken into the team yet. It seems he's going back to Ericsson. Let's see how that works out. Again, is it Højlund? Is it Xerxes? Xerxes had some decent moments earlier this season, but he's probably a manager, Erik ten Hag, that he can't afford for Xerxes just to find his feet. He needs a striker who's going to get goals and win him games like Højlund proved in that second half. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes forward. On the larger picture, you unfortunately, I don't think he is the man. I think he's, to your point, you mentioned, like he feels like a couple of games away from getting the chop. I just think there's not enough on the pitch consistently. I'm not just talking about results, I'm talking about performances that tells you that United are trending in the right direction. And I think the challenge for Man United, Ayub, is that it's not just City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, because from a footballing perspective, in terms of identity, philosophy, a way of playing, stability. Those three teams are probably way ahead of the others. Emery's getting there slowly, but Villa have to navigate Champions League campaigns and see if they can sustain Premier League focus. They're doing okay, joint on points with Arsenal, but it's not just those three, is it, Ayub? It's the Villas, it's the Chelsea, Spurs, or I know after that tough result at Brighton, but they look like they've got a certain way of play. At least they offensively look pretty decent when they're going forward. So Newcastle, Brighton. So there's a lot of other, let's say, teams that may not necessarily push for the title, but are still probably better than United at this stage. So there's a lot of competition, let's say, in that particular space. Yeah, look, I don't think he is the man. There were some noises this week. I don't know if you read the reports about Xavi. I don't know how true those are. Probably need to speak to Man United fan, but I just feel at some point, because it's Manchester United in terms of the stature of the club, the changes off the field. Obviously, there was some. We'll have to get to the bottom of the story about Sir Alex Ferguson being moved aside, being moved off the wage bracket. Let's say, I should say. But yeah, let's see how it
Yeah,
pans out.
just on that, what's your take on that? Because it's a maybe it's quite symptomatic of the that it I've never I was never a huge fan of Alex Ferguson because in a sense he's quite a dominant character, and his shadow just I don't know almost sort of I don't think it was healthy. When I found out he was on 2.5 million or whatever it was if you can get it, but it I think this is the first time I'm impressed with a move. I think if it's Ratcliffe, I think it's a good move because I think you almost want to cut the ties of of what's happened previously. Right, let's now look to the future because as long as he was there, the shadow was always cast that it's Ferguson and obviously everything that he's done. So maybe this is perhaps the beginning of looking to the future rather than always sort of looking to the past. Uh, but you mentioned all the clubs, the Newcastle, the Chelseas, the Villas. They have an identity, and there seems to be a camaraderie. There seems to be a spirit uh, with Arteta and the Arsenal as well. Even though in the early days it was difficult, but you always thought there was a plan. All Arsenal fans always said to me, "Trust the process." So at least there was something behind what was happening. This is just it's almost as if he's making it up every single week. He has no idea. He'll have a decent result, and everybody sort of thinks, "Oh yeah, have we turned the corner?" And the next week it's a poor result. So I just don't know where this club is going. To your point as well, I don't think Ten Hag is the man. I really do not think he has the credentials uh, to navigate these turbulent waters, these difficult times. It needs somebody, and I suppose, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they pick somebody, they have to have done their due diligence. They have to give the man time. I still think there's too much deadwood. I think there's too many surly characters. I certainly would always get. I mean, I've been talking about Rashford. He'll have moments of brilliance, but I think he's a character that needs to be removed. I think he's part of the past. You need to start identifying players for the future, and he's one of many. Fernandez to me as well. He's not a captain, not of Manchester United. I think he's too volatile. He's not somebody that you look to build a side around. Certainly not what I would consider a player. He's too temperamental. That's not what you need at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think it's a fair shout on this Alex Ferguson piece. I was a, I actually changed my mind on this when I heard about the story because I was like, on the first hand, you think, wow, it's a big move in terms of just the negative publicity. It's not like, I mean, they talk about a good day to bury bad news, but it's not that United have been flying high so that you could just hide some news like that. It was during pretty much a slump for that story to come out. The only thing I would say, to be fair to them, is you don't know the full in and outs. I mean, Sir Alex Ferguson, it may have just been a mutual understanding. He may have also been thinking, well, maybe I also want to be just drifting away a little bit, as in away from the limelight. You might argue he's not going to walk away from that pay packet.
There's no way he was walking away.
No,
There is absolutely no way.
fair, fair,
Uh,
fair enough, but we still don't know the full in and outs in terms of any health concerns or whatever it might be. Look, we don't know.
Health
Um,
concerns. He was at, I think he was in Scotland, the Aberdeen game. I think. Do you know the game that uh, after. So there's no health issues. Certainly, I couldn't see any health issues. I think he's smarting. I think he was quite happy with 2 million for doing nothing. Uh, so
He was still an ambassador for the club, or you were still an
oh
ambassador
yeah,
for the club.
oh yeah, yeah. That's very taxing.
Careful now. But
Uh,
no, no, look, but yeah, I don't mind it too much. I mean, look, ultimately, if you look at Arsenal, for example, you don't see Wenger, like there was some talk about, and he has kept his intentional distance. Now, he had attended one of the games last year, and they made a bit of a big deal about it, but it was one of those kind of, a bit like, no doubt, Klopp will be in the future when he at some point returns to Anfield. I think Wenger took the view this, I need to move away from the club, and it also actually keeps the memory with the fans and the connection in a space of fondness, as opposed to maybe thinking about the last few years as to how it ended. I think that's what's kind of good about that. Whereas Ferguson, to your point, kind of stayed with the club. Talk about him appointing Moyes, him always being part of. You see him in the stands, all the rest of it, being visible, right? Because when you're a
yeah.
big character like that, being visible is enough. So yeah, look, I don't mind it too much, to be honest with you. It's a call that they had to take, whether it's part of the overarching cost cutting measures that's been talked about at Old Trafford. Let's see. Overall, though, as a club, other than that second half against Brentford, which was the last bit of football I've seen him, I didn't watch him in midweek against Fenerbahce, but when I watched him, I thought there's something there. It was a good amount of energy in the club, in the stadium. I thought the performance merited it. I thought they were well deserving in the end, just in terms of football. But it still felt a little bit like if Brentford strung one or two passes together, they could break through that midfield. So I really do think these are difficult times for them. I'd be amazed if they finished in the top four spots, just because not just of their own failures, but also of the competition now at the top end of the pitch. I really do think they need to start making some sound decisions in terms of managerial appointment, whether that will be at some point this season or whether that'll be in the summer. But if Manchester United want to get back to where they should be, which is always challenging for Premier League titles, right now they seem a long, long, long way off.
Absolutely right. I think it's a club that needs to make decisions. I thought Ratcliffe would. I thought that he's a successful businessman. I mean, he'd say that many successful businessmen own football teams, and his football team's not successful. But I really thought that he would have a strategy, a plan, and be quite clear. And as I said, the Ferguson decision perhaps is one of those decisions that I actually was very impressed with because it can't be easy because in a sense he is a legacy and he always will be a legacy. But I just kept on thinking that you need to cast away the past, and I think you need to start planning for the future. And in a sense, it's almost a symbolic gesture. Financially, it's a sound decision as well because that's 2 million that's staying in the Man United coffers. But as a United fan, I would have looked at it very positively rather than negatively, and almost thinking it's a slur on a legend. Uh, let's see how it pans out going forward. I think Ten Hag has to go. I think you can't carry on with the odd result and thinking, yeah, he's all right, he's not bad. You have to think long term. He's not a long term solution for me. I'm not sure whether Ratcliffe has the appetite to do that right now, but I think if he's serious about this football club and taking them to a better position, the manager has got to go. But then the question is, who comes to replace Ten Hag?
Yeah, the worry from my side when I watch them is I don't think they're just a managerial appointment away. I think the manager is one thing. I think to your point, there's still a little bit of, I wouldn't say deadwood per se, but I don't see enough quality personnel in that 11 that's suddenly going to form a new way of playing in a very quick way. Because I think Man United fans, the idea has been, and this is what I'm talking about, where you progress and success isn't always linear. So what I mean is, look at Slot. The idea was that he'd come in and he's also walking behind a living legend. Yes, Klopp hasn't achieved what Sir Alex Ferguson did, nor did he have the tenure. But in terms of Premier League being an iconic manager of an iconic football club, Klopp meets that remit in terms of what he achieved at Liverpool Football Club. Yet Slot's come in. He stayed a little bit under the radar. He's not said as much. He speaks well at press conferences. He's just thought about, I need to do the work. Now, some might argue Liverpool's identity was already relatively ingrained. There's not been a huge amount of
Yeah.
loss. But there's a little bit of Liverpool chatter, perhaps prematurely, that perhaps this did come at the right time and that Slot is bringing a certain poise and calmness in games that perhaps Klopp's ethos, main footballing ethos, wouldn't allow for. Again, I think it's a little premature. I think let's just wait and see how it all pans out. But there is some of that chatter. So it just goes to show that if you're a manager who's got conviction in his beliefs, who's got a certain way of playing, it doesn't mean that the football and the results have to fall off the map. Because Liverpool were a credible team last year, yet Slot this year has got them top of the table. Yes, Klopp had them, pretty much right up there for about 30 odd games. But Slot's shown that it seems that this team will go a long way this season. So it's not just a case that, oh, because the manager's left, suddenly things are going to come a cropper. No, if you get the right man in and you have the right stability and the right player personnel and a right way of playing and transmit that to the players, it shows that it can work. It can be a relatively seamless transition. Now, again, I don't want to make it, I'm not talking about just the outcomes and trophies because I don't think Slot will do incredibly well if he's as successful as Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool fans would say, sign me up for half of that right now. But I'm just saying that in terms of football, it's not as though they like 10th and you say, yeah, well, we kind of expected that because, this is a transition year. Because there was a lot of talk of transition year, yet Liverpool are right there at the top and deservedly so, with an incredibly tight defense, which was one of their kind of bugbears last year. So I think it can be done, but I just don't see with the United way of playing and the style that even a change of manager is going to bring about a great deal of success in relative quick order. I still think they have to go through those processes, appoint the right person, appoint the right player personnel, and then who knows, maybe in a couple of years. But I just think it's still a long way away yet.
I suppose with Liverpool, it's, I mean, different stages because Liverpool is a reasonably well-oiled machine. Slot with a side which is still intact. All the players are still intact. They're all committed. They're all focused. I think with United, I certainly would say, well, look, we have to almost write off one season. And I think they've never done that. They've always tried to keep on competing. So they've spent ridiculous amounts of money. They've bought players in that are overpriced and not good enough. I mean, Anthony springs to mind. But it almost should have been right. Okay, let's take stock. Let's have an overhaul because really, I think the first thing they really should have done is identify players who are just not going to be players that are going to take this club. Uh, well, I was going to say to the next level. I mean, they need to get to the first level before they even get to the next level. And I think they've just gone about it, in my opinion, the wrong way. They should have really just taken stock, forget one season and say, right, all we want to try and do is reset. And they've just not done that.
Yeah, and I think just to bring it back to one of the things we discussed, I think at the time as well, you at least in person. I remember when Arteta shunted Aubameyang to one side after there were a few incidents off the field, and Arsenal went through a really bit of a barren run up front in terms of scoring goals, and they fell short of their target that year, which was to finish fourth, and they finished fifth. You'll remember when Tottenham took them to the cleaners at the Spurs Stadium, and then Arsenal gave up the ghost and fell. And I remember speaking to a lot of Arsenal fans, even yourself at the time, and I remember thinking, well, look, if you have faith in the manager and you have faith in the process, where Arsenal want to get to is the point where they are now, which is hopefully challenging for Premier League titles, which they have done for the last two seasons. At that time, if somebody said, hey, in a couple of years, this is where you're going to be, they would have said, wow, right, okay, cool, sign me up. But sometimes it's part of that process, what you just mentioned, which is making really difficult decisions, often for short-term pain, often for a lot of people pointing fingers, suggesting if we had Aubameyang, we'd have got fourth spot. I would have been like, who cares about fourth spot? The remit, the target ultimately as a big club is to challenge for Premier League titles. And that's where Arsenal have finally gotten to with the big time. I think if United want to get to that point, you're absolutely right. They need to make some tough calls. And if that means writing off a season, maybe writing off two seasons where you hopefully see some progress in that second year, so be it. But that's what it's going to take, especially because the foundations are so bad there in terms of playing style. I don't think it's just hire top coach and suddenly everything's going to come up trumps. But I think it's a case of understanding, right, this is who it is. We're going to trust them, getting the right appointment, the right personnel, and starting from scratch. And if that means making some really brutal decisions from a player perspective early doors, everyone's got to get on board. To your point, I feel like they've all just tried to keep on the treadmill, trying to somehow find a way to navigate fourth.
Mm.
They've not really broken everything up, let's say, and kind of built from scratch. So yeah, I think they're a long way away. Let's see. I don't think it's a case of calling for Ten Hag's job, but it feels like all the pundits are kind of saying all the right things apart from saying the most important thing, which is unfortunately it looks like he's going to have to go. And I remember I said it at the time, Ayub, that FA Cup win. I still believe, you know what I'm going to say. I'm not saying that it would have served Manchester United's interests to have lost that game, but that's why I'm saying you can't judge these kind of overall performances on just the outcome of one game. I would have still been okay. I mean, I know United did it previously with Louis van Gaal, but I would have still been okay if they said performances still haven't been good enough. Thank you so much for that FA Cup trophy win. It would have been seen in some circles as harsh, but I could have at least justified it in the sense of overall across 38 games, across 50 games, I guess that season, Manchester United were nowhere near good enough. So I feel like the FA Cup win kind of uh, they slightly fudged it, and now you've got this malaise where you win a game, you draw a game, and you lose a game. So I think that's where they are right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the the cup game because it was magnificent. I've got to be honest. I mean, that was a masterclass from Ten Hag. I'm one of those who actually felt that maybe this guy has got something about him. So that was the problem. It was such a good, and it really was. That was the a manager, because tactically he was outstanding. If memory serves me right, I think it took about 30 minutes before City had a shot on goal. So it was just wonderful tactical masterclass that I think even the most ardent critics of Ten Hag must have thought, I probably does know what he's doing, so he deserves an opportunity. Maybe that was where it needed somebody to make such a tough call, but in the long run, it would have been better for United. But uh, they are where they are. It's going to be interesting because it is a saga at United, so it will be interesting to see how it pans out. But enough about United, and that more or less is a wrap because we're just focusing on two major stories: the big game and then United. So that's it from us. Uh, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, smash a like, do a solid. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. It will be much appreciated. And we'll be back next week with a review of what's happened and whether we were right about the Liverpool game and the result. Man United might actually sort of do us and by sort of smashing six past whoever they're playing. So let's see what happens. So have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. And we'll see you next week. Ta-da!